All right, for anybody tuning in, welcome to another episode in which I interview former military occupational specialties of different types who have all come through Code Platoon and kind of have some common themes with what we do here at Code Platoon, namely taking people from the military and helping them launch a career in software engineering and related fields. Today, we have several people who were linguists in the military, and also somebody who was not a linguist, but studied a lot of ancient languages and has an extensive amount of experience studying language just in general. And so we're going to be talking about the connection between linguistics and learning how to read and write code. So let me start off, and I'll tell you what, Megan has been our keynote speaker on several occasions, or at least one that I can think of. So we're gonna start with her, and I'm gonna start by creating a rivalry, because that's how we should do things, right? Is by asking her. We've already had done an episode about a similar topic, but with people who were musicians, professional military musicians who came through our coding boot camp and are now software engineers. So Megan, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to start off this question and say, why do linguists make better software engineers than musicians?
All right. Well, I think some of the key differences are in how you learn. So when you go to learn a language, say Chinese, you learn it by doing it. And it's the same with coding. So we go into coding knowing that practice is the key to learning. It's not the books that you're reading or that, you get it to just the right YouTube channel and you learn it. It's you have to use the language. Just like with coding, you have to use the language to learn it. And then I think the other key difference is that there are multiple ways of doing something with both. So just like with, if you want to translate something from Chinese and English, there might be 10 different ways to translate it, and they're all correct because languages are a very soft thing, and that they can have there's 10 different words for love or 10 different words for something abstract like thinking. And it's the same with coding. If you want to code a program, there's a ton of different ways to code something. And so I think having that right mindset going into learning programming is what really helps us, because we're not going in thinking there's only one way to do it or there's only one exact source that you're going to learn from. We know that there's a lot of different things that you can do.
Good points. All Jack, let me go to you next. What with your experience? So first, tell us what language you specialized in, and how is your perspective the same, or does it differ from what Megan was saying there?
Weirdly, my feelings are kind of analogous to Megan's. I'm an Army veteran. I was an Arabic linguist for 11 years, but I don't do that anymore. I wouldn't say that I'm particularly proficient at this point. It's been a while, but yeah, there's many ways to say I would like a glass of water. Me want water is roughly sufficient for I would like a glass of water, but there's some nuance there, and that is also tends to get reflected in the code. It's possible to achieve some real rough edge stuff to solve an immediate need, but if you're looking for perhaps a cleaner, more elegant implementation, I think that is probably the closest analog I find in language to code, is that, yep, there's many ways to solve this problem, and there's some that are going to be more elegant or more appropriate for the task at hand. But yeah, that's me.
Sure. Now, Alex, if I'm remembering correctly, you have a little bit of experience implementing this on the ground. If I'm remembering your background correctly, I may not be, but how would your experience of seeing this actually implemented in practice, how would this be comparative to what you do now?
Well, so I've actually had the opportunity. I've had a few different roles already in my young software engineering career where I've used various languages. So I think having a base knowledge that are sort of thinking of it like it is like a speaking language, there you kind of want to do the same things with all these different programming languages. It's just finding the right syntax for each one. So it's sort of like using a different language like a speaking language to say the same thing. So I think that sort of being like a linguist and having that mindset is very beneficial when it comes to hey, I have this, I've been working with Java for 2 years, but now there's this role that requires me to know JavaScript or Python or something like that. It's easy to jump over to that and sort of learn it because you know sort of what you need to do. It's almost like the grammar's there, you just need to know the syntax or the vocabulary. So if you approach it sort of like that, it helps out a lot when you're, you know, when you have to do various different languages.
Sure, sure. So, and that offers a nice segue. So Andrew is the one person in this group here who's spent a lot of time, I think, maybe some of the rest of you have as well, but has spent a lot of time studying languages that people don't speak anymore. You spent a lot of time studying Latin and ancient Greek. Am I right on that?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, so do you think there's a connection there of spending a lot of time studying something that nobody speaks? Well, that's JavaScript, right? We don't talk in
Yeah.
JavaScript. You're not going to go to a different country and find people who speak in JavaScript. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there's some clubs out there where people do, which would be super weird, but how does that impact how you approach this and this learning of having a lot of time spending, studying something that people are not speaking out loud? This is not an auditory thing. It's entirely an academic sight thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, just to give a little background on my experience, I came into the military from an academic background where I studied Greek and Latin and New Testament. I actually have a master's in Greek and Latin. I have a master's in New Testament. And my particular area of interest in graduate school was the intersection between Greco-Roman paganism and Christianity. And so I had to study a lot of different languages in order to understand that intersection. Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Coptic, a lot of dead languages, that aren't spoken anymore. And so, they don't have that linguistic currency that a living language does. But I think what drew me to those languages was the window that they open onto different cultures and people living in different times and places. And I think that was one thing that drew me to computer languages, was that it kind of opens this window, of course, not into the human mind, but into the you could say the mind of a computer. On the other hand, a computer language is very much a living language. And I think that's one thing that I found so refreshing, was that you can do things with computer languages. They, in a very real sense, they are words that are being actualized, or word becoming flesh, right? There's so many practical applications with that language. And with dead languages, they offer a great window onto ancient societies, but there's not really much as far as practical application, unless, except in niche communities like the Catholic Church, for instance, still speaks Latin. So I came to computer languages with a passion for languages and for studying them, and I think that really helped carry over and translate into me learning them. But I think I had an added passion because of the practicality of computer languages, and I think that really fueled my passion and ambition in learning them.
Sure. So that offers up an interesting segue into the second question I had, and this is a free-for-all, so I want to input from everybody here. There are a lot of people who come to Code Platoon, and maybe some of you had similar reservations when you came to Code Platoon, you got into this discipline. There are a lot of people who they kind of have this maybe a little bit of anxiety that comes up and it says, man, I wasn't very good at math in school. I don't know that I'm not going to be very good at this because I wasn't very good at math in school. And they see coding as math. But there's something that clicks in some people when they recognize that this is almost more linguistic based and it's more language based than math would be, even though math in some philosophical sense could certainly be considered a language in and of itself. But first of all, did any of you have that kind of anxiety? And second, do you agree? Do you think that coding itself is more language based, or is it more mathematical? Don't everybody answer at once, I swear.
My thoughts here are that language learning is a function of structure, right? Like at first it's like, how do I say this thing that I would like to say in English? Now it's like, okay, how can I construct that in, you know, like the language I'm trying to use? And initially that is kind of what coding felt like is, okay, I want to make, you know, a box appear. How do I do that? You know, and it like you perhaps like start like, okay, I'm going to draw a box on the screen. Then you're like, oh, we have this whole like library to manage the display or rendering of arbitrary content. And so then you start to kind of like learn the process, not by of like, okay, I know what I want for an end result, but like how instead can I use this set of tools in that a way. It was like the switch from like learning how to construct a sentence in English, turn it into Arabic, and then say it, to just constructing meaningful statements in Arabic. And it's like a function of the learning process. That was super intimidating. Like for first 4 weeks of Code Platoon, probably some of the most demoralizing of my life. Once you get over that hump, you start to like kind of see like, oh, this shit works. Cool. You know?
Yeah, I actually would say, like, when I was studying, I didn't feel math was super necessary. I think if you're doing game programming, it is. Like if you want to be able to figure out vectors and such like that, like you do need some math. I think the strongest thing for me has been logic, actually. Not so much as the linguistics, as it is just being able to understand how to get from point A to point B.
Sure, fair enough. But I mean, I guess that we could connect that if we had a lot more time and I wanted to go super in depth. You know, that is an old question of, is math logic or is logic math? Or, you know, that's a whole line of philosophical thought in itself. But Alex, did you have any? You were nodding your head there for a second, but I might have interrupted you, so I apologize.
No, I was just, that's what I was thinking prior to Megan's answer, was like, I felt like it was much more logical. Like, and then also what Jack was saying too, it's like, trying to conceptualize what you need to do, and that with what you have, like what this language is, was probably the most intimidating thing. I didn't really get that feeling that I needed math skills. It was more like, I have these tools, how do I put them together to make what I need to make, sort of thing. So that I sort of agree. I agree, not sort of, I agree with what both Megan and Jack has said.
Sure. Andrew, do you have any follow-up?
Yeah, I would say the logical part of language certainly carries over to analyzing code. But of course, there's very little numerical basis in language unless you're talking about singular and plural. But as far as logic, certainly, I mean, when you're looking at a sentence, you're parsing a word, you're asking yourself, okay, what declension is this word? What's the conjugation of the verb? What's the mood? What's the tense? What's the number? What's the gender? And how do all these words fit together to make a coherent statement? And I think similarly in code, you are looking at you're looking at a block of code, you're looking at expression, you're determining what part each word plays to make that code block a coherent statement.
Fantastic point. Yeah. So would you guys say that then, like, just in general, now this is going to be a little bit different for Andrew, but your job, so let's look at the actual job of a linguist. Does that make a nice natural flow into software, or is that something that, like, yeah, it helped you get started, but not necessarily analogous to, or, you know, it's not necessarily a smooth transition other than helping you get started? Or is it like, oh, this is perfect, like this helped me really transition? What would you make that? How would you answer that?
I think other than the fact that I work on computers to do my job as well as to do the programming, there wasn't a lot of similarities between the work I did at the job and the programming itself.
And do you think that's largely based on the fact that you were like not working as like you were working as an interpreter, which is a little bit different than just speaking the language and interacting with people? Or do you think there's a distinction to be made there?
I haven't really done the side of just speaking with people outside of learning and using the language. I've only worked as the interpreter. And I would say, like, it's because the language is already there and we're just translating it, like, you don't actually have to construct anything.
Right.
So, like, with programming, you do need to do that construction yourself. If you are speaking or writing or coming up with it your own, it might be more similar.
Sure, sure. Alex?
I didn't work as an interpreter in the Army. I learned Chinese when I was in DLI. That's where I learned it. But I would say that was sort of, it kind of helped me just because the language itself is more logical. It's like the grammar patterns are very straightforward and it's sort of plug and play, and it's just finding different ways to say things. So, and like learning the vocabulary. So I think just that language in general is very programmatic, I guess. You know, it's very like, this is the structure of everything. And then you just put in the pieces as you go. So I think that language itself learning helped me out a lot. I can't speak on as far as working as an actual linguist. That wasn't exactly my job in the military, but
Right.
Learning that particular language, I think, set me up for success and programming.
Sure. And that you kind of you beat me to the punch on my final question. I'm going to have a final more fun-based question at the end for everybody. So everybody who's watching this video later, just reference back to exactly what Alex said, and that's gonna be pertinent here in about 10 or 15 minutes. But Jack, do you have any follow-up thoughts on that?
I don't really see a lot of analog between like my process for learning language and my process for learning coding. There's also a tremendous like gap in between it. Like I learned Arabic like 2006, and I really seriously started learning coding in like 2019 when I started taking some computer science courses, because like I always did, you know, computer stuff, but it was always like hobby, you know, setting up like a bot for like doing nerd things. And yeah, but I suspect that the process of learning language, just because it is so logical, and initially you're just like literally translating it, or at least for me at least, it was translating in my head this thing in English into Arabic and then proceed. And eventually I hit a point where I just stopped doing that. And I find that there is some like relation there, but it's not one to one. I like it's I don't quite have words for it.
Sure. No, that makes perfect sense. And Andrew, I think you could speak to this. Like maybe that's where studying in a language that you're not speaking actually in some ways might actually help, because you're studying it more from an academic perspective, but you're not trying to speak it. So that's not even really on the table. And I think that when we try to learn foreign languages, we often do exactly what you're saying, what Jack's saying, which is try to kind of conceptualize this one-to-one correlation in our mind, which I spent a lot of time learning Spanish when I was doing some DoD contracting in Central America. You start to realize, like, even a language that's as close with Spanish, like, you can't do a one-to-one with every word and sentence. It doesn't work that way, right? So I don't know, Andrew, what are your thoughts on that from a like more of an academic perspective? Does that actually help more?
Yeah, I think it may. As far as studying ancient languages, it's very much not, you're not speaking it, you're reading it, and you're trained specifically to read it or to write it. So and that's what you're doing with code. You're reading it, you're analyzing it, and I think that what drew me to coding was a lot of the same things that drew me to ancient languages. And that was, you know, when I'm translating a passage, it's like I feel like I'm solving a puzzle or I'm cracking a code. And I think that's the same thing. I feel like I'm doing the same thing when I'm reading a block of code or I'm writing it. I'm going through it line by line, element by element, trying to figure out the function of each element, each line, and how it fits together. So there's not really a speaking element to it. It is very much reading comprehension and analysis and parsing out all the little details. So I think certainly my knowledge of ancient languages has helped me.
Oh, sure, sure. And this is, so the next question then for all of you, for people up and coming, so people who are in the military right now, and they're looking at their time, they're coming up on getting out, and they're trying to figure out what on earth do I do? They've got some experience doing this. They've got some experience as a linguist maybe, or at least some experience learning foreign languages. What do you say to them? Each one of you, what do you say to that person? You say, hey, this is a great opportunity because, like, how does that follow on? Or how would you make the case? Maybe another way of putting this is to your former self, reverse time and speak to your former self from 5 years ago. What do you say to them?
I mean, I think I would say that they can find a lot of the same reasons for studying code that they would for studying a language. And I think that a lot of people become linguists. They go into languages because they want to have a positive impact on the world. They want to talk to people from different cultures and backgrounds and be able to be a bridge between different cultures. And they want to have, a positive impact on their environment. And I think that's what coding is. It's you're using language, you're using words to create and build things. And that is going to ultimately have that can ultimately have a powerful impact on the world around you. There's so many things you can build and create with code. And so I think just as language can be translated into action, so code is translated into action, although it looks little bit different. It's web applications, and it's technology of all kinds. But I think ultimately it comes down to translating thoughts into action, and that's how I see it.
Great way of summarizing. Alex, what do you got?
I would probably I had some time to think about it while Andrew was speaking. I'd probably be more practical with my past self and just be like, it's sort of why I picked Chinese in the first place to go learn, was because I had a background in finance. China was becoming an economic, power, and I figured that would help me out the most. And the coding and software, it's becoming more and more prevalent in everyone's lives and everyone's occupation, that it just makes sense to get a foundation of this and to learn this, because it can only help you and it'll only help you further your career. It's not a hindrance. It's like there's so many different things you could do with the language too, besides, like, you don't even have to be a developer. There's so many other occupations where having a base knowledge of a language or an understanding of it can really benefit you. So I would probably approach it more practically like that if I was talking to my past self.
Yeah, I like that answer. Megan, what do you think?
All right. Well, I want to turn this around a little bit and say that not everybody is in the linguist role because of a choice. Oftentimes it is because they do well on a test and the military puts them in that role. Not everybody who becomes a linguist feels that they are good at learning languages, because sometimes we get put into roles that we don't excel at. And not all linguists would make great programmers. It is something that I think everybody should try if they're interested in it. And it does still require a lot of hard work. So I would tell them that they still need to be willing to put in that time. Being a linguist might make the transition easier for them, but it doesn't take away that need for hard work and that need for actually spending time learning.
Solid points. All well said. Jack?
I think my addition is going to be a lot more personal. If anything I've said has landed with you, then maybe this will land for you as well. the world of problems you can solve with language is, you know, a domain. We're not going to talk about the size of it, but it's okay. You can do X with this language. I am routinely stunned at just the range of stuff I get to do on a daily basis, and how like satisfying that is. Like the ability to like, oh, now I can like assemble this sentence, or I can understand this, you know, like particular construction in Arabic was awesome. Like that was a really like positive experience for me. And now like I just get to like do that for the majority of my day. And any given day, I can either pick more of the same problem that I was working on the day before, or, you know, assuming that is more or less done, I can move on to the next one. Like I have yet to be bored, and I'm coming into like my third year as like an individual contributor, just solving problems. The range of it is shocking. And so if you like that a part of it, of like learning how to solve things and understand things and apply that understanding to do stuff, like holy shit. You do I routinely say I should have gotten into this a long time ago. Like I love it. And I suspect that the capacity to learn language, the capacity to succeed here are related. They're not necessarily guaranteed. It's like it's correlated and not a causative. But if you're interested, absolutely do this. It's a hoot.
Fantastic. Good answer. So, and we only have 5 minutes remaining. And in the last, and so we're going to go in reverse order of who just answered. So that means, Jack, you're up first. You're going to give me your shortest answer. And here's the question. Okay. In the movie Arrival, at the end of the movie Arrival was presented what is known as the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. And the idea is that speaking various languages changes the way we think. It actually changes the way we actually interact with the world and we see the world. So I wanted the quick answer from each one of you. Number one, is this true? And does this include coding? Does learning other languages actually open up the way that you see the world, including JavaScript, Python, any number of coding languages that you use? Does it change the way you view the world? Jack?
I'm gonna say yeah. I have absolutely noticed a much stronger tendency in me to like both like organize how I go about like taking care of problems, and then to how I break them apart into like chunks. It's the, you know, process of estimation, writing stories. Like you start with an epic, like, oh, we're gonna make this cool new feature. What do we actually have to do to like accomplish that? And it is absolutely bleeding over into other parts of my life in terms of how I plan and like, you know, schedule a family vacation substantively different than it was before. And I contribute a lot of that to the what I do in any given day. Does it broader change like how I see and interact with the world? Don't know. I'm kind of like a fish in a gold or a goldfish in a bowl. Like you can't really estimate yourself. I don't think so, but I don't know.
Sure. Fair answer. Megan?
All right, I would say yes and yes. I do think learning programming has changed how I approach problems, how I solve problems. I don't know if there's going to be a difference between, say, learning Java versus JavaScript of, will, each one change my worldview, but definitely learning coding has changed how I approach the world.
Solid. Alex?
Yeah, I would agree with both Megan and Jack. But I would say though, learning a different computer language, while it won't broaden your, cultural views worldwide, it change there is different sort of cultures within the programming world, and learning everyone has their own little language that they love and they stick to. So learning those different languages sort of opens you up to those little worlds, which is kind of neat too.
That's super cool. Andrew, final thoughts, and then I'll close it out. You got about 2 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think learning computer languages has given me a greater appreciation of languages and words to impact people. When you're coding, you are giving the computer instructions to do things, to build an app, and it automatically does it. You don't have to finesse or anything. But in the real world, when you're communicating with people, you have to, there's certain nuances you have to use. You have to use tact when you communicate with people. But there's amazing things that you can accomplish through words and communication if you do it correctly. And that's it's a little more blunt in the world of programming, but it's just made me realize well, if I can do this with a computer, imagine how I can use my words to impact the world around me and communicate with people and organize and have a positive impact on my society.
Fantastic answers, everyone. So again, like I said, we're kind of out of time. We wanted to keep this short and lighthearted as possible. So first of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me. Andrew, Alex, Megan, Jack, thank you so much for joining us. I wish these are subjects that I think we could explore for hours. I mean, this is perfect. This is perfectly right for a long form podcast, but you know, we also want to get people interested. So if you're a military linguist, you know someone who's a military linguist, you just have a passion for languages and you want to dig deeper into this, please email me, greg@codeplatoon.org. Probably, it will probably be the case that I could probably connect you with one of these fine people here and they would be willing to talk to you as well if you are, you know, if that's your interest. But for right now, please visit us at codeplatoon.org. Again, you can email me, greg@codeplatoon.org, and we can discuss this further and see where your career can go. So to each one of you, thank you once again. I appreciate your time. It is extremely valuable. I know that, and I am very appreciative for joining us. So thank you on behalf of Code Platoon, and it was good to see all of you once again.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Greg.
Greg.
Later.